Oh yeah, I'm just gonna say it. Ginny and Georgia season 2 is genuinely like low-key excellent television. I know. Alright, for some reason Ginny and Georgia has this reputation of being supremely cringe, and I covered this in my first season review. I've been watching this show in anticipation for the third season, because typically when I cover Netflix shows, they do well. So I had no real interest in this show. I was like, I'll give it a go. It looks like a big release. And season 1, yes, had some cringe moments, but also I was struck by how good some of the writing was, how kind of in-depth the character explorations were, and what a good idea I had of all these dynamics. It wasn't just between Ginny and Georgia, but also the dynamics they had with their friends, with their family, with their abusive partners. I just thought it was a really well done show overall, and I thought the cringe was intentional. To summarize my thoughts from that first video very quickly, I thought the cringe was intentional. It was meant to be, you know, how we were when we were 13, 14, 15. You think stuff is cool, all right? That's salute. I've been having... where she goes like that is cringe to us. But when you were younger, you were like, cool, yeah, I showed that guy who's boss. The reason I say all this is season 2 has cut out a lot of the cringe, cut out a lot of the clunky stuff that was present in season 1, at least a bit. This is like laser focused, well-written family / crime drama. I love this season, guys. I love this season. So today we're going to talk about all the notable events that kind of stuck out to me. On top of that, we're also going to go character by character. I'm just going to see what comes up. I also really appreciate the feedback and the comments on my previous video, like a lot. So there's a few I'm going to reference here, both ones I agree with and ones I disagree with in this video as it becomes relevant to the characters I'm exploring. So first off, we're just going to go through notable events. So major plot developments. Ginny runs away. This was the cliffhanger of the end of season 1. She goes to Boston to live with her dad Zion after discovering Georgia killed Kenny. Now, I do think maybe Ginny was a bit sort of lacking understanding in the sense of like, why did Georgia do this? I'm sure there was a reason. Mum, why'd you do this? She does just kind of run off and judge her mother very harshly. But at the same time, guys, I feel like we're all a bit too harsh on Ginny. Like, let's just acknowledge if you found out your mum was a murderer, it would freak you out for a bit. Like, as far as like delusional, irrational crash outs go, this one wasn't that bad to me. Like, she needed some space. It's shocking news. She's not responding super logically. It's fine. On top of that, a big highlight I will say of this season is the characterization and the exploration of Zion. Now, I don't think Zion's portrayal in the first season was bad writing. I just felt like it was very much intentional that he was kind of like a deadbeat dad. And if that's what they were going for, they absolutely nailed it. So I don't think bad characters, like morally bad characters, mean it's bad writing, all right? And I feel like sometimes it seems online, especially around this show, there's some confusion in regards to that. So no, I'm not saying he was a poorly written character. I actually thought the contrast between young Zion and adult Zion in season 1 was really well done and actually quite subtle and nuanced. But this season, we get more time with Zion. We get a lot more of an idea of what makes him tick. And it's more a 4-dimensional portrayal. And I think it's good because, I don't think season 1 was mishandling Zion, but I think season 2, again, this show is very much... we learn about characters according to their relation to Ginny and Georgia. So now that Zion is a lot closer to Ginny, we learn more about him. And I just think he was way, way better and interesting this season. He was much more interesting. He wasn't giving me weird heebie-jeebie vibes. And I actually empathized with him a lot. I thought his position handling Ginny's kind of self-harm was a difficult one to be in. Like, it is the right thing to do to let Georgia know. But at what point? How much of a breach of trust is that? Like, I thought he was just a really interesting character. I was kind of rooting for his new relationship. I sometimes thought his parents were good. Like when the parents showed up and were like, Ginny, that's your mother. Don't talk to her the way. I'm like, oh, his parents are cool. And other times they were just fucking awful to Georgia. So I was, you know, but in a good way. Like that's how complicated parents are. But I thought Zion throughout this season was showing up and I was proud of him as a character. I'm not saying it's better or worse writing than the first season. I don't think it was ever bad writing with Zion. But as a character, as a person, I like him a lot more. I'm seeing the vision with Zion. You know, I think he did step up to the plate and he was doing his best to kind of rectify being seemingly a deadbeat up until this point. And you also find out, you know, when Georgia left, why she left, what was on offer to her from the parents. And you get why he has complicated feelings about that, especially when he kind of lashes out at her or they're having an argument at one point. It might be in season 1. but they're talking about the fact that he didn't want to work this job. She ran away, and then she comes back, and now he needs to like work to support this kid that initially she was happy to like leave him behind with. So I thought all of that was actually really well done. Moving forward, Ginny returns to Wellsbury. So after kind of running away from her scary, evil mother, she comes back home. Due to a kind of stalemate they reach, she is now kind of like bound to stay home, and she starts going to therapy in secret. It's Zion's idea. Georgia does not know, and I thought these therapy scenes were excellent. I thought this show did a really good job of showing the advantages of therapy, what good therapists are like, by the way. I've been to a bunch of therapists, and there is a world of difference between bad therapists and good therapists, and I felt like the dynamic here and what the therapist was talking about was good. And on top of that, I think it spelled out a lot of stuff that was going on with Ginny internally in the first season that clearly audiences missed, because now we need to talk about it. The way people judge, like as an audience, the way people judge Ginny so harshly in that first season never made sense to me. She is unlikable at times. She is a bit bratty. I thought she was incredibly uncharitable with her reading of what Georgia was doing with the Austen letters to the dad, right? Like the fact that she was like writing them herself and not sending them to the real dad. Incredibly uncharitable. But at the same time, she's an angsty teenage girl. There's a lot of things where, yes, she was out of pocket. The Oppression Olympics, while Hunter was misunderstanding and not hearing her properly, the where she took that was extremely awful. There are so many moments in season 1 where Ginny is out of pocket, relentlessly cruel to a mother who, minus a few serious character flaws, shows more care for her daughter than most people. Like, I would kill for some of the interactions that Georgia and Ginny have with one another, or at least what Georgia is throwing out to Ginny in the first season. I totally get that she's unlikable at times. I don't think she's a bad character. I don't think she's a poorly written character. And I think as a person, she's not fundamentally mean or nasty. She is a teenager. She is grown up as biracial. She has to deal with a barrage of constant microaggressions, a mum that will never truly understand her, but does her best, but also has a very complicated past. She's got so much on her plate. And she's like fucking 14 or 15. Yeah, she's going to act out and do stupid shit. How many of you didn't do stupid shit? Like, be completely honest. And I think stuff like that first initial sex scene in season 1 kind of shows this like insecure, unsure nature she has. The one with Marcus where you're like, did that just happen? Anyways, the reason I say this is I think a lot of people missed the subtext of what was going on with Ginny in that first season. I think that they missed what the writers were trying to show. And I appreciate that the writers in the first season don't sit us down and hold our hand through complicated things too often. They actually just make you sit in this moment. For example, the Oppression Olympics argument, I don't think it's necessarily the show saying Ginny's right here, or you should agree with these statements, or this is our final statement on race relations. I think it is showing to teenagers who have complicated feelings about their own existence in a predominantly white society, just like take it out on one another and not verbalizing it well and saying things without thinking. And I don't think the show needs to like flash up an emoji with a smiley face or a frowny face so people kind of understand, you know, whether Ginny is in the right or not. And the reason I say all this is it feels like they needed to find a way for the audience members that missed it to communicate what Ginny was going through. I think the therapy scenes are good exposition. So oftentimes, especially in Netflix shows, by the way, we get awful exposition dumps where it's like, no one talks like that. No one talks like that in extended monologues, uninterrupted, this succinctly. Like, come on, unless you're me. But no, people are really, I think the way the therapy scenes are done are excellent, like genuinely excellent. And you learn a lot about Ginny's character and a lot about what she's going through and how she feels. Particularly one that jumped out to me that I sort of didn't think about too much in the first season was the fact that she's never had a consistent friendship group because she's always moving, because her mum keeps moving to chase new guys or get away from things. And I think that was really well done. On top of that, I love the scene where Georgia crashes the therapy scene and she actually allows her mum to sit in there. I thought the growth between Georgia and Ginny, which we'll get into more as this video goes on, was really, really powerful. I think especially because in that first season, we actually didn't see them get along too much. They really stretched out the tension of Ginny and Georgia not getting along, being totally incompatible. And so when they finally start reconnecting in season 2, it's really a powerful moment. On top of that, can I just say, I love that season 2 picks up right where season 1 leaves off. All right. I absolutely love when shows end with a bunch of cliffhangers and then we continue straight away in the next season. The reason I say that is, yes, I know in theory we age with the characters. So like season 1 ends in 2015 and then season 2 picks up in 2016 and it's been a year. But no, because I like when if season's going to end with cliffhangers, we're like, what's going to happen, right? When Ginny is on the motorcycle with Austin, I'm sitting there about to watch the next season being like, oh my God, what happens there? And I hate when it's just like, this thing happened off screen and this thing happened off screen and this thing happened off screen. No, this season 2 should be called Ginny and Georgia Part 2. Like, it is a direct continuation. They are still in all the beefs, all the complications. Maxine is still mad at Ginny, for example. There's just not one part where I'm like, oh, I would have liked to see how that wrapped up. For example, the guy investigating Georgia is still around. He's still there. He's still sniffing about. And it isn't just some line of dialogue where they're like, we actually handled him off screen. Like, no, we get to stay in all these interesting threads they set up in season 1. It feels like one big 20 episode season, which I really, really appreciate. And again, love the therapy scene, love Georgia coming into the therapy scene. I love her, how initially defensive she is and not blind, but almost like refusing to see the light she is. And slowly she starts to get the point and she hears her daughter explain the things they can't relate on. And it's interesting because I do think, and I said this in the first season, I think at times, and again, I'm not the best person to speak on this, but as someone who watches a lot of shows and tries to unpack characters, I'm doing my best. But I thought Georgia at times really did do her best to validate and understand the microaggressions that Ginny was experiencing and perceiving. Like, she seemed very adamant about handling the teacher, yes, in a bad, problematic, her own sort of way. But at the same time, I think in Georgia's way, that's her way of showing she does understand. And again, we can talk about how problematic that is later, but I also think this show does a really good job. There's a line at one point where after what Ginny knows about her mum, right, the whole fact that she's murdered someone, Ginny's talking about the fact that like, I can't tell mum anything in case she then goes and like does something violent or insane, right? So I'm scared to tell her about things. And like, the teacher, for example, is one of them. But there was also another example I'm struggling to remember. But there was another example where she then went to lash out at someone. Oh, actually, no. There's a moment, a really subtle moment where Georgia is doing Ginny's hair, and it's right after that monologue Ginny's had about like, how do I know my mum won't do something violent or crazy if I tell her something? And while they're talking about something sensitive, I think she says, kind of like a salty remark at Georgia, and then Georgia like pulls some of her hair out. And it's a really subtle moment, like it's blink and you'll miss it, but it shows why Ginny isn't fully comfortable talking to Georgia. Like even that little micro exchange they had resulted in a somewhat aggressive, violent moment. And I don't think I actually like Georgia. But, like while Ginny is in that really sensitive space, things like that are going to hit a lot harder. It's not just fun banter anymore. And similarly, I think this arc around Ginny's self-harm is incredibly well handled. Like, this is why I said, like, why did no one tell me season 2 was so good, or came off the start of this video talking about like, oh my God, like this is actually a pretty good show. The self-harm exploration here is devastating and powerful. And the scenes with Zion are well done. The scenes with her not wanting to tell her mum are well done. The scene where Zion almost tells Georgia and Ginny instead goes, fine, I'll stay home, just don't tell Georgia. Amazing. But the scene where Georgia finds out is genuinely like a masterstroke of writing. Can I just say, I was in tears. I was a grown-ass man in tears at a dynamic that I will never fully understand, right? I'm not a young daughter. I'm not living the same existence as Ginny. I will not be a mother. Like, I can never fully understand that bond, but I was tearing the fuck up. I thought this was so well done. And I thought the initial combativeness and aggressiveness that Georgia comes out with is such a good exemplification of her fight or flight responses. And they stretch it just enough where you're like, oh, well, this is probably why Ginny was scared to tell Georgia. And then it just hits you like a truck because Georgia quickly shifts from being like, let me see, what are you doing to yourself, to all of a sudden like tearing up and knowing its reflection on the dynamic she's set up and knowing its reflection to an extent of her parenting style and It's harrowing and sad and powerful, and I just thought they aced it. I thought they did such an excellent job. I think this was truly just a powerhouse moment in what was already a really solid season. On top of that, the moment where Ginny and Georgia connect in the car finally, and Georgia opens up to Ginny about why she killed Kenny, I think it was, the guy that touched her. I hope it was that. I think it was that. I do get some of the murders confused, but I'm pretty sure she was telling Ginny about Kenny. But that scene where they connected and bonded over that was beautiful, and such a great release of tension they've been building for literally at that point 13 hours. Just really good stuff. From there, Georgia and Paul get engaged. Now, this is technically in season 1. But the arc here is that she has a past. She feels like damaged goods that she doesn't want to tell Paul. I feel like the fandom is really underselling how good Paul is. I know he's like generic white guy 69. He's like all American, kind of bland, safe dude. And I know a lot of people are rooting for Georgia and Joe, but both things can be true. And that's something we're going to have to talk about a lot in this show. Oftentimes, both things can be true. All right. For example, Georgia did kill people technically to protect her family and protect herself. That doesn't mean Ginny is then in the wrong, even if she knows that, being confronted by that and needing space. All right? It's still murder. It's still confronting. Both can be true. Just because it was for the greater good of Ginny doesn't mean Ginny can't have a bad reaction. And similarly, just because Joe is seemingly good for Georgia does not mean Paul is not also incredibly good for Georgia. And look, if we want to be cynical, we can tell off Paul because he's overstepping as a stepdad, but I fundamentally disagree. Like, sorry, he's financially supporting the family. He's reputationally helping them. He's giving a sense of stability. He's trying his best. I also think him wanting to keep guns out of the house. Yes, it is good they had a gun, so we can argue about that till the cows come home. But I think he has genuine concern for the kids. I think his concerns are valid, and I think that argument they have is also really well handled. I think he, throughout the season, does a really good job of understanding who Georgia is. Georgia will kind of fly off the handle a bit, say some out-of-pocket shit, get very defensive, and he does a very good job of kind of not even icing her out, just check it in the moment. Specifically the one where there was something they were going to tell Ginny. I think about maybe him moving in. And Georgia told Ginny out of spite because they were arguing. And the way he checks on this, just like, so the plan to tell her together at the right time, that's just out the window. And then he moves on. He's like, I'll see you for breakfast. It's like checking her in the moment and moving on. I actually think it's a really good example of like healthy communication, especially handling someone who can be a bit unhinged, aka Georgia. And I think yes, it's a bit awkward when he's like, Ginny, you're in trouble. Stop doing that. Like, yeah, it's a bit awkward, but also this maybe is the boring white bread stability that this family needs, because Georgia is almost way too fun sometimes. I found it interesting that they got annoyed about her having a party. Actually, no, I don't agree with that point. I was surprised that they cared that much about having the party, but I think Georgia is sort of like, she doesn't care that much, and she's just putting up appearances for Paul and being like, oh yeah, that was really bad. I saw another video talking about the fact they find it strange that Georgia gives blowjob advice to Ginny but cares about a party. I disagree. I don't want to slam that content creator too much. I won't name them, but if you've seen the video, you probably know what I'm talking about. But they seemed very pearl clutchy around the sexual dynamics that were explored in this show, and I find that a bit strange. Specifically, sending the nude or the bikini photo, the bra photo in season 1, or the loss of virginity scene, or just anything sexually explored in this show. I don't think this show is making softcore porn for freaky dudes in their 30s or 40s. I think it's an honest exploration of sexuality at that age, and this idea that people that age aren't doing stuff is strange and bizarre, and I don't think it ever veered into like if they were having like Euphoria level sex, and I really like Euphoria, but if they were veering into Euphoria level sex scenes for these 14 and 15 year olds, like I would get it, especially given the age of some of the actors and actresses, or even just how young they look. I was very surprised to find out that Ginny, the actress, is older than me, and same with Marcus. Maybe it speaks to some self-loathing about my own aging, but they're actually older than me. And I was like, oh, I actually thought this was one of the shows that cast young people. Anyways, I'm just rambling. Let's move on. So now we have a big plot point that I want to talk about. And this is going to take up a good chunk of the fucking video, all right? Because I can't get my head around this. Georgia kills again. This time she kills Cynthia's comatose husband, Tom, in a disturbing act of mercy. I could talk about this till the cows come home. So in my previous video, when I described Georgia as someone who has done a few bad things in her past, they said that was downplaying it. Yes, humorously downplaying, but they were like, no, my interpretation was she was borderline a serial killer that essentially dates guys that are going to do this sort of stuff just to kill them. And I thought that was uncharitable and kind of over the top. But in saying that, I did think there was something to the fact that these patterns repeat. But normally that's a very common occurrence with people leaving abusive relationships. They'll often find themselves in another one. And if she's lowered her threshold, if she's accidentally killed someone the first time, right, I can see that someone like that who accidentally kills someone the first time but then has to essentially act like a murderer, dispose of the body, do all these crazy things, I can see that then they would have a lower threshold to do it again than someone who hasn't killed before, right? So the first one was she wanted to overdose and escape. She accidentally killed him. That was accident and also trying to get out of an insane, scary situation, right? So I think, yes, technically in the eyes of the law, she would be in trouble, but I think morally as an audience, we all kind of go, fair play, right? Like, whatever. But on top of that, I think it's important to notice that a normal person going through something like that would change them to the point where they are more comfortable with killing again. So then we get to her next murder, and that's the guy that is sexually assaulting or groping Ginny, right? We see in the yoga scene, it's probably not the first time it's happened. By the way, it also probably speaks to a sense of hypersexuality in Ginny and why she let the virginity scene go the way it did without any discussions around protection or what they were doing, or like it kind of happened. Like it almost could speak to a shock response, or also just a desensitization to the importance of these things. Maybe, I know virginity is a social construct, but I still think, you know, if you can have a nice first time, it's probably ideal. But I think maybe the fact that she was touched inappropriately by George's husband at that point maybe speaks to the fact that she doesn't, you know, see the worth in making these things sentimental or a big deal, or just kind of wants to get over and done with. That's maybe me being charitable to what was rushed writing, but I don't know. I think these writers are pretty solid. Anyways, the reason I bring all this up is when Georgia kills the guy that was touching Ginny, that to me makes sense when we know all of it. It wasn't her first murder. She didn't just go to the police. It was like she's technically killed someone before, and she would rather handle it this way now because that threshold's been broken. So if we just go off those two, I don't think the idea that she's just this like blood-hungry person that just wants to kill all the time and is almost looking to fall into these works. I don't think this is a kind of Promising Young Woman but for murder sort of vibe, you know? Promising Young Woman was that movie where the woman would kind of put herself in dangerous situations sexually to then confront these men and punish them. And I really like that movie, by the way. It's very good. But I didn't think what Georgia had going was similar just for murdering these men, right? I didn't think she was like, let me find abusive men just so I can get this bloodlust out of the way. Absolutely not. But where I do think this comment was maybe validated a bit, and the reason I'm struggling with this so hard is I cannot for the life of me understand why Georgia did this on so many levels. So many levels. Killing Cynthia's vegetative husband is so bizarre to me. Now, initially when it's done, it actually full on feels like a very sinister, strange murder, because this season does that like dual perspectives for episodes 8 and 9. So we get one perspective from Marcus and kind of everyone outside of Georgia and Ginny. And then in episode 9, it's essentially from Georgia and Ginny's perspective. So we see the full backstory, but when it's initially presented, it feels like flat out murder that Austen has seen. And it really jumped out to me. I was like, I don't see the desperation here. Like her back isn't against the wall, why would she do this? But then we get the flashback, and I was like, okay, maybe she was blackmailed by Cynthia into doing it, or maybe there was a discussion she had with Cynthia that was so earth-shattering and almost Cynthia convincing her or begging her to do it. And truthfully, the scene we got here fixed it a little, but not enough. All right, essentially we find out that Cynthia helped get rid of Austin's abusive father, Gil, or essentially like delay his process of staying around by blacklisting him on the rental market, or essentially. So he can't get a property around unless he buys outright, and even then probably not. And that was a really nice, that was notably a shifty illegal thing to do, but a nice thing of Cynthia to do for Georgia after seeing Georgia get assaulted by Austin's dad. By the way, Gil Kill Gil. Gil is a fantastic character, scary, tense, in a very realistically abusive way. I thought the portrayal, both young, by the way, insane casting for the young and old in terms of how similar they look, but also just like really good writing, captures how scary an abusive relationship can be without really going over the top in what it shows. And I think for this type of show, you don't need that. But yeah, it was bizarre. It was so strange. And yes, we get a scene where Cynthia essentially talks about the fact that she wants to move on to a relationship with Joe, and this guy's essentially dead, but they're just waiting for it to happen. Now, I need to get a little deep with you guys. Look, I work in the disability community. I care for a few disabled people. One of the guys I talk for is a leading disability advocate. And he talks about the fact that there's so often this idea that whenever a disabled person is put into a vegetative state or even just goes to hospital, there's this kind of approach from medical staff and society in general where they're just like, oh, well, maybe they're better off, maybe they're happier. And it's a pretty awful, confronting thing that this is a societal view. Now, yes, Cynthia's husband wasn't disabled, but he's now in a vegetative state, essentially on life support the same way the guy I works for talks about. And this idea that like it's purely just a mercy kill and a good thing to do is complicated to me. And I think if they want to achieve that, there's a few ways they could have gone about it. In a way in which, yes, technically it's still illegal, but morally it is consistent with Georgia's character up until this point. Because truthfully, I don't really think it is consistent with what we know of Georgia up until this point, in my opinion. I've seen comments being like, well, she's just a narcissist. She'll do whatever she wants when she wants. I'm like, They are pitching it and framing it as a mercy kill. But I think if they really want to sell us on this, it could have been twofold. She could have had a much better relationship, stronger relationship with Cynthia for a lot longer. And I think if they really, in my opinion, this needs a rewrite. That is my opinion. And this isn't because I'm like, Georgia can never do anything bad. But I think they are framing it, the way the season goes, they're framing it as once she does a good thing for someone else, that's the murder that gets her caught. Oh no. And I'm saying, it actually was a really strange, out of character, out of pocket, weird thing to do that wasn't even that morally justified given what we knew. So in order to fix it, in my opinion, what they should have done is have Cynthia basically saying, yeah, you know, before Tom was in this vegetative state, he said that if it ever got this bad, just put him out of his misery. He like either wrote me a note or he said in person multiple times, I never want to be like that. I don't want to be a burden on you guys. If I am ever unable to talk, speak, move, I want you to do it. I want you to take me out. And then you have Cynthia open up to Georgia. Maybe she knows about one of the murders, maybe not, whatever. But regardless, that's a writer's choice. But you have Cynthia open up to her and be like, I just can't do it. He's asked me to do this awful thing. Maybe she feels comfortable talking to Georgia about this because she knows Georgia was stealing from the mayor's office. So she talks to Cynthia and she goes, he asked me to do the thing, the worst, and I just can't do it. I can't bring myself to do it. I know it would help us all. I know it's what he wanted, but I can't do it. You build it up over the season. And then finally Georgia goes, I'll do it. Or just silently agrees. I don't mind the idea of Georgia actually saying like, I'll do it. And then, you know, that to me is believable because we've had her kind of de-escalate, right? The first one was accidental murder. And then the one after that was like, okay, you've hurt my daughter and I've already technically murdered someone before, so my threshold's down. And then the third one is like, okay, like I have the guy's consent, Tom's consent, because he's told Cynthia that he wants her to do it. Cynthia can't do it. I'm going to use my lower threshold, the fact that I've done this before and I know I'm strong enough to do this, to do something that she can't. That's it. That's all you need to change. And it kind of works for me. It's still a naughty thing legally to do, but morally it makes sense. And it doesn't feel like this weird, unnecessary favor she just did. Like, are we sure Cynthia actually wanted her to do that? No. So you can't sit there and tell me like, oh, well, because Cynthia said in the earlier scene it would be so much easier if it happened, that was permission for her to go do it. No, it was weird. And the only excuse I can give, and this is me being charitable to the writers, the only excuse I can give are two things. One, Ginny was drunk and just kind of went, I am the mercy killer. I am the good nurse. I'll just take this guy out. I'm sure she wants it, even though she didn't explicitly say that, just kind of said it's hard, which most people would say, but fine, I'm going to do this. And she was a bit tipsy and not thinking straight. Sure, but... And then second, it might be speaking to George's sense of self-sabotage. This is something that's explored in the back end of the season where she cancels the wedding and she starts moving and she's like, we gotta go. It's time to leave home. You know, like she always has this pattern, and now that things are getting real, there's a sense, like there are other things going on, but there's also a sense of like, it's just time to go anyways. You know, she had the thing with Gil, and it's just time to go. And you're like, oh no, I think she cancelled the wedding before Gil. She did, before Gil showed up, and then Austin shot Gil. The reason I say this is maybe a sense of this is Georgia can't have anything good, and there's almost this subconscious need to self-sabotage. This could be a reach. This could be me giving too much credit to the writers for just making a shitty writing decision, but maybe it is this thing of like, she did something and she was kind of convincing herself it's what Cynthia truly wanted and it was like an appropriate thing to do for sure. And she just did it because, you know, like part of her almost wants to get caught. Part of her almost is self-sabotaging because all of this stuff is too good to be true. Maybe, but I don't know, man. Did the writers intend that? We'll see. Now, this can all be fixed in season 3 with certain writing choices that maybe explore the self-sabotage angle that she knew it was wrong to do. It can be fixed. But as it stands, I don't think we got enough time with Cynthia and Georgia for me to really wrap my head around her. Also, she knows that like this guy is investigating her. Why would you put yourself at risk like that? Like, babe. And put your family at risk for something that isn't a direct threat to your family. Like, at least the previous ones were direct threats to your family's mental or physical well-being. This was like a friendly favor, but you also don't know if Cynthia full-on would have wanted you to do that. And again, like going back to the ethics of, I think we needed at least Tom saying to Cynthia, for me to be like, that was a morally understandable kill, I needed Tom to have said to Cynthia, like, I don't want to live if I'm vegetative, like, you need to take me out. Or somehow Georgia and him were friends before he went vegetative and she knew that. You know, like similar to in Dexter, there's a season where someone knows who Dexter is, knows he's a serial killer and is terminally ill and asks him to do it for her, asks him to make a poison food or something that she can eat because it's her favorite food. It'll be laced with poison. And because he has that low threshold because he kills people already, he's like, sure. And it's like a nice moment. And I think they could have done that without Georgia being a serial killer, but kind of done that because she's killed people before and just had it be a bit more consensual. Because as it stands, it's evil, immoral, illegal, dumb, irrational, and stupid. And I don't understand. And the writers obviously needed her to get caught in the finale, and that's all great. But I think it doesn't land as well as it could have because it's off the back of something that just felt so perplexingly out of character. And this isn't me saying I can't handle characters I like doing bad things. You know, in a certain season of Dexter, Dexter does something bad and all the fans are like, Dexter would never do that. I'm like, you don't understand the show then. But in this show, it just is not consistent with the writing at all. Georgia is smart and resourceful and isn't framed, at least from my understanding, as a serial killer. I don't think she's meant to be even like a Joe Goldberg type. But the backstory she's putting Austin through does feel like maybe Austin is going to grow up to be a serial killer. He stabbed the kid in the hand and punched him in the face and has witnessed a murder and covered it up. And I do really love Austin and Georgia's dynamic, by the way. Some of my favorite scenes are Georgia and Austin talking. The way Georgia talks to Austin is really sweet. Anyways, moving past that, because that was just like genuinely perplexing writing. Ginny and Marcus start dating. Yo, I love Marcus. Not because his demeanor kind of reminds me of me sometimes when I'm being a bit more low key and not doing YouTube videos. I think Marcus, especially in the second season, is a really well realized character. Yeah, he was up and down and kind of weird and broody and stoic in the first season, but I think that was just him trying to be cool. And season two, he lets those walls down, and not in a way that feels like they were just changing their mind about his character, in a really interesting way. And I thought the exploration of his depression was excellent, dare I say. Very relatable. I've been there. Just the scene of his mother like comforting him while he was lying in the bed after ending it with Ginny was so sad. I also thought the setup here where Georgia was like, yo, like don't drag my daughter down, and then he starts having a depressive episode, so he's like, I'm gonna drag Ginny down, I have to end it, it didn't come off as irrational or clunky writing. I thought it was all really well earned and well executed, and I thought his depression was really well done. I was really worried he's gonna off himself or something. I thought it was moving and excellent. I also liked their relationship. I feel like I'm alone in this. I feel like I'm standing against the crowd of people. You know, I am the gorilla versus 100 angry Georgia and Ginny fans, but I liked their relationship. I get why they work and Hunter didn't. Also, Hunter was really empathetic this season. I'm not going to say I misunderstood him. I thought he was a cringe lord and really annoying in season one. But I think in this season, he's obviously taken a slice of humble pie after Ginny dumped his ass. And I think watching him kind of try and bond with Marcus and struggle with the breakup was really quite real and sad. And they didn't make him cartoonishly over the top. I actually felt really bad for him. He has like an also bad haircut this season, and it looks like he's struggling, and I had a lot of empathy for him. I really liked him. But yeah, I liked Ginny and Marcus's relationship. I found the scenes where after they broke up, they were both going through the live photos and holding them down. First off, very relatable for this generation. The Gracie Abrams song, this show got me into Gracie Abrams. I hadn't listened to much of her, except for the ones that float around on TikTok. I really like this song, and now I've been listening to that EP, and I love it. Like, I listen to it in the shower. It's great. So I love Gracie Abrams. Thank you, Ginny and Georgia. But yeah, I like the scenes where they broke up were good. The scenes where they were together were great. I just liked it. I thought it was really, really well done. Really good stuff. Moving forward, Max spirals. So yes, okay, I've seen a lot of people hating on Max this season instead of Ginny. Yeah, she was being really mean, particularly mean to, was it Abby? Abby? Was it Abby? Is Abby the redhead girl? I think it's Abby. Really mean to Abby, I thought, in my opinion. But you know what? Like, she's crashing out. She's always been like that too. She's always been very OTT emotionally, very over the top and like manic pixie dream girl almost to an extent. But I don't know. It made sense. She's been an irrational, annoying teenager. Yeah, she was unlikable for a bit. I also thought Ginny approaching her at the play, like, oh, that was in season one, but like wild timing. But yeah, after a while, she dragged on with Ginny and Abby, and I'm glad Ginny and Abby actually bonded over their mutual, like, what the fuck is she doing moment. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Next from there, Zion wants to be more present. I already talked about that before, but I really like Zion this season. Oh, there's a great moment where Zion comes to dinner with Paul's family. So Zion's family joins Paul's family and George's family. Bro, I teared up again. They all start roasting inadvertently. A few of the family members take pot shots at Georgia. Zion's mum, after being like, be respectful to Georgia, saying it to Ginny, then like puts her on blast and being like, oh, you put her through God knows what instead of putting her with us, which, look, truthfully, I think may have been not the best choice. You know, I think if two parents are willing to look after your kid when you're running from abusive homes, maybe take it. But this idea that Ginny's now damaged goods, and like Georgia didn't do a good job when, she's done her best, and like they're in like a nice house with Paul, and they're doing okay. It was fucking awful. And also the stuff Ginny has been through is really complicated, not just stuff you can put on Georgia. And I thought it was just an awful thing of Zion's mum to say. And I get it. Like maybe Georgia should have considered handing over the kid, but legal guardianship? I don't know. I don't know about that one. Moving forward, Joe becomes increasingly suspicious of Georgia's shady past. I did appreciate the way Georgia and Joe's kind of mutual understanding of who one another was to them kind of ebbs and flows. Sometimes you get the impression that they do know who one is. At a certain point, it feels like Joe knows who Georgia is, but Georgia doesn't know who Joe is. And then it finally clicks. It's a good moment. I love that final goodbye they have where he's like, there's something here. And she's like, yeah, there's something here. I recognize patterns or whatever she says. But all of it was just good. It was good. I like Joe. I like when he's dancing on his own. I like him clapping cheeks with Cynthia. Like, good, juicy subplot. Yeah, I feel bad for Cynthia's husband, but if he was definitely dying without George's intervention, and look, like some people have miracles happen. So that's why I have a bit of an issue with Georgia taking him out unless he explicitly said so. But yes, she cheats on a husband that was 99% sure kicking the bucket and not coming back. But, yeah. Anyways, I thought it was good. Moving forward, Austin witnesses Georgia kill Tom. Again, I like this. This feels like it could set up Austin for a dark path. But I also love Austin's reaction when his mum gets taken by the police in the finale. And he's like, I didn't tell anyone. Like, what's happening? Also, I don't love the way we got there was off the back of a murder that felt like it was just there so she could get caught instead of one of the other murders. Why didn't we have one of the other murders get her caught? Because then I think it's perfect. I think it's way better. It's like this dark past she's trying to run away from that she was a victim of catches up to her at the worst moment. But I will say I love the idea that Georgia has this habit of skipping town. The one time she stays because she feels like this is good for her is when she gets arrested. I think it's just good poetic writing. Like I liked it. She's finally having a good moment for her. And that's when the cops show up. It's sad. It's powerful. I didn't talk about it much. I've been talking about the characters more than the technical elements. But the performances from both Ginny and Georgia are genuinely like bordering on Golden Globe worthy. Like if Succession wasn't coming around during when Ginny and Georgia was dropping, like, they're so good. Both of them are excellent. And you need to remember, like the actress playing Ginny is like 26, 27. And she's channeling like a 14, 15-year-old really well. I could not believe how old she was. So you need to keep in mind, this isn't just a teenager being a bratty teenager. It's like an adult doing a real fucking good performance. Real good performance. Also, before I forget, I do want to touch on Ginny's, I guess, racial subplot. I don't know how to word this, but it was explored in season 1. We get more with the teacher. And I know this might just be my white guy lens. I thought initially the teacher saying, hey, you called me out for not having any black authors or diverse authors. I would love if you could pick one that's meaningful to you. I get why it could be problematic. I do get picking the only black girl. If he did that without her ever bringing it up, if he randomly pointed out the only black girl and said, hey, do you want to pick a black author? Maybe he could have gone to the internet, Reddit, asked fellow staff members that are African-American. Like, it does feel strange. The only reason I don't think this whole idea from the jump is insane is because she had called it out in season 1. She had brought this up before. And yes, I think him fucking in season 1 being like, oh, like the N-word's really bad. Don't you agree, Ginny? Is like fucking insane. But here I thought it was somewhat of a response, especially to the letter she gave him. So I sort of went, you know what? Maybe he's turning a new leaf. And then I was slowly proven wrong because as the season goes on, then he expects her to teach the class. And I thought that was a bit fucking strange. But I thought the discussion she has with multiple people, some people think it's fucked up from its initial conception. Zion being like, look, on one end, it's kind of good, but also, do you really want to be part of the solution when you've got your own shit going on? I thought his perspective was really good. And truthfully, I've seen a lot of people say that this show handles race simplistically, but I think some of these things are actually quite well done. For example, I think the teacher thing throughout season 1 and 2 is well done. There are moments where I kind of get the teacher's intention, and I think maybe Ginny was a bit harsh in her reading, but then Ginny was proven right and I was wrong, or maybe I was right in that moment, but then as it went on, he kind of let me down. But regardless, I think the fact that there's so much to talk about with this teacher and with a few other subplots here, like for example, Georgia in season 1 saying, I don't know if it was racism or not, but we have to use it to our advantage. And even Ginny writing the letter at the end, all of these things are really complicated. And when you look at things like fucking Green Book winning Best Picture, right? The movie where like a white guy transports a black musician through the racist South, and then he learns to not be mean to black people anymore, and they eat fried chicken together. That's unironically something that happens in that movie. When I look at that winning Best Picture, I think that is dumb, unsubtle, stupid white commentary on racism that is made to be easily digestible for audiences that just want to pat themselves on the back and not actually reckon with microaggressions and their own part in things. And I think, yes, Ginny and Georgia has some really cringe lines and angles around race, particularly like high schoolers acting like they've never seen a biracial girl before was really strange in season 1. But I think stuff like the teacher and stuff like George's response to the hair and that hair scene, I think actually spark a discussion that's a bit deeper than people are giving it credit for, because, you know, my white guy over here was sitting there being like, oh, I kind of get what, oh, you know, I was going on the emotional journey with Ginny at certain points. Like I was like, oh no, maybe he means this, or maybe he meant that. Oh no. But I do think the teacher initial idea was somewhat well-intentioned, maybe a good idea. But him expecting for her to then teach the class and explain baby's first racism to them was strange and weird. And I actually really liked the scene afterwards where they all kind of wanted to talk about the book on their own terms after she left. I also think her leaving and then being with kind of the dumb English class was also interesting and sad. Yeah, I fucking love this season, guys. I thought it was great. Anyways, I'm just gonna run through characters quickly, see what comes up. So Georgia, all right, we've talked about Georgia to death. I don't think there's too much more I can really think of with Georgia. Ginny, sort of the same. I think we've talked about her enough. Marcus, yeah, I think they aced the depression. Maxine, talked about her. Abby, oh yes, Abby. I loved the way they communicated the scene where she starts hooking up with this like dick jock. Do they list his name here? No, but she starts hooking up with this like jockey dickhead that was kind of mean to her, and there's this like aggressive sexual energy. It's kind of like hate fucking. Like she's really like, let's just do something physical. It's what I need right now. I think off the back of season 1, it completely checks out. But on top of that, I really do like the scene. One, he was kind of like a brutish dick about it, but the scene where he figures out she's taping her leg. It was really subtle. It was a really well done payoff that I'd completely put in the back of my head after season 1. And you kind of shit yourself when it happens and you feel really bad for her. It's a tough moment. And I also appreciate the scene where they implied, I think, that she was going to make herself vomit in the bathroom. It also almost implied that the girl before might have been doing that, but I wasn't exactly sure. Maybe she was getting high. There was coughing. I wasn't sure what I was communicating, but definitely with Abby, there was something being communicated there. But I think Abby's character is really well done. Her separation with her parents is sad. I'm glad her and Ginny struck up a friendship. Now, I fucking hated Abby in season 1 after she let Ginny get in trouble for stealing, kind of pinned it on her, especially like either not knowing, which shows ignorance, or if she knows about the racial implications of Ginny getting potentially arrested. I think it's really fucking disappointing that she didn't, help her friend and stick up for her. And I'm glad Georgia kind of schooled them. But also they're young, they grow up. There are things I did when I was 14, 15 that I, if I stay up too late at night, I'm like, what was I doing? Moving on, Paul Randolph, as I mentioned before, really like him. I like him. I know he's a bit bland, milquetoast, but I do like him. Zion, I really appreciate Zion's growth this season. I don't know. I just think he's a lot more interesting of a character, and watching him try and do the best for Ginny while also not be a dick to Georgia like he has been in kind of season 1 was really good. Next we have Cynthia. I liked Cynthia's vibe way more. I really had a lot of empathy for her with what she was going through, and I was simultaneously rooting for her affair, not rooting for, but kind of understanding of where that came from, and also still didn't see her as a massive traitor against her husband. I just thought it was a very human story. And I'm very notably, she's not in the season finale, so I'm wondering if she called the cops on Georgia or whether she was thankful Georgia did it. Like, we don't know how Cynthia feels about Georgia killing her husband, and I'm very curious whether she was like, get that bitch, or whether she was like, what'd you do? That's all to be revealed in season 3, and I can't wait personally. Joe, I really like Joe. I love more of Joe. I want Joe to have a bit more to do personally, and maybe not just doing Cynthia. Like, I would like him to have a bit more to do personally, but I think it's really good. Gabriel Cordova. Who is Gabriel? Okay. Yeah, Gabriel's the guy that's investigating. Sorry, he did such a good job being undercover. I forgot who he was. So Gabriel is the guy investigating Georgia Miller, and yeah, he's a fine character. He's not the most exciting, but I think the sense of betrayal that was done with him and the guy he was working with, I think the sense of betrayal that was established, with the guy he was sleeping with in a relationship with that works with Paul and Georgia was really well done. It was a good scene, and I like that he probably told her. Next, Gil from Kill Gil. Love that. Also, like, I know it's like a fun, cheap little joke that they call Episode 9 Kill Gil, a play on Kill Bill. But I think it's actually fairly apt because Kill Bill on surface is like an awesome, awesome movie about, women with samurai swords killing a bunch of people and her going after her ex-husband. But when you watch that movie, like, yes, it's all stylized and like, Bill tried to kill me, so I'm going to kill Bill. But like, it is also very much in the second part of Kill Bill, a story about violence and abuse. Like, initially when you start watching Kill Bill, you're like, oh, cool. This is a really fun, exciting movie. She's going to kill her ex-husband. But the second movie really kind of makes you go, hey, like, he literally tried to kill her. That's a form of domestic violence. It's fucked. And I think the parallel here with Ginny and Georgia is good. It's a good parallel. But yeah, really like Gil. I love the tension when he shows up. I love that he kind of seems good. He seems to get along with Austin. I love this is the loyalty we need from Ginny. I love when Austin sees Georgia getting thrown around. He's like, I want to kill that motherfucker. I'm going to shoot him. And he has no chill. Gil tries to talk to Austin afterwards, and he's not having any of it. He's like, I don't want you around. Go away. I thought it was really, really exciting. Now we're going to talk about little setups, things that are going to happen in season 3. So we have Georgia being arrested. I don't think she's going to be in jail for too long, but maybe they will. I mean, season 2 did a really good job of continuing what was set up in season 1. So maybe she'll be in jail for a while. I'd love a trial of Georgia. We were deprived that in You. So I would really love a trial of Georgia. She gets good lawyer. I'm really curious how they're going to go about fleshing out the murder of Cynthia's husband. But yeah, Austin witnessed the killing. I assume Austin will open up to Georgia, surely. Paul is blindsided. Yeah, we know Paul's blindsided. Ginny is pulled back in, still trying to figure out who her mother really is. Yeah, I am curious whether... I feel like Ginny is going to be very understanding of the other 2 murders, but I feel like Ginny's going to be really dumbfounded, hopefully the way we are, by Georgia's murder of Cynthia's husband. Regardless, thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this, these videos do take a bit of time, so I really hope you enjoyed it. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, if you enjoy me talking about my thoughts on things, for members only or Patreon members, they're both the same. I do every fortnight a podcast where I talk about everything I've watched, both shows and movies, also books as I finish them, and like anything else I'm interested in. So you get some good nerd rants. They go for about an hour or so each. I'm hoping as I get more memberships, I'll do them longer. I can like justify the time more. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Please like, subscribe, comment. Have a lovely day. Also, I will be covering season 3 when it comes out. I'm very excited. So yeah, stick around for that. It'll be a long deep dive. I can't wait. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and have a lovely day.